Real LABUBU Horror Story. Mia Chin had been collecting LABUBU toys for 6 months, joining the craze that swept through social media like wildfire. The peculiar elf-like creatures with their sharp teeth and mischievous expressions had become her obsession. She had 17 of them displayed on floating shelves in her bedroom, each one carefully positioned and photographed for her Instagram account. But the 18th LABUBU was different. Mia found it at a night market in Bangkok during her vacation, tucked away in the corner of a vendor stall that specialized in knockoff designer toys. This LABUBU didn't come in official packaging. It was wrapped in old newspaper, the vendor claiming it was vintage, very rare, from private collection. The toy itself was unsettling in ways Mia couldn't quite articulate. While most LABUBU figures had that playful, slightly creepy charm, this one felt genuinely malevolent. Its smile was wider than normal, teeth sharper in its eyes. Those black bead eyes seemed to track movement even when the toy was perfectly still. "How much?" Mia asked, already reaching for her wallet despite the warning bells going off in her head. The elderly Thai vendor looked at her with an expression Mia couldn't read. "For you, free. But you must promise, if things go wrong, you burn it. Not throw away. Burn." "What do you mean, if things go wrong?" The vendor didn't answer, just pressed a newspaper-wrapped toy into Mia's hands and turned to help another customer, effectively ending the conversation. Back in her hotel room, Mia unwrapped the LABUBU and examined it under the fluorescent bathroom light. There was something painted on its back, symbols or characters she didn't recognize, partially worn away with age. She took photos, planning to research what they meant later. That night, Mia had the first nightmare. In the dream, all 18 of her LABUBU toys came alive, their plastic limbs moving with sickening jerks, their mouths opening wider than should be possible. The new one, the vintage one, stood in the center, conducting the others like a maestro of chaos. They surrounded her bed, climbing onto her chest, their tiny hands surprisingly strong, their sharp teeth getting closer to her throat. Mia woke up gasping, her heart hammering. Just a dream. Just her mind playing tricks after buying that creepy toy. But when she turned on her bedside lamp, the new LABUBU was no longer where she'd left it on the nightstand. It was on her pillow, inches from her face, positioned as if it had been watching her sleep. Mia scrambled backward, falling off the bed, her rational mind insisting she must have knocked it over in her sleep, that there was a logical explanation. But the toy was facing her now, not the wall, and its smile seemed wider than she remembered. She grabbed her phone and took a picture, comparing it to the photos from earlier. In the original photos, the LABUBU's expression looked mischievous, but relatively normal. In the new photo, taken just now, its mouth was definitely wider, the teeth more prominent, the eyes somehow darker and more focused. "You're being ridiculous," Mia said aloud, trying to calm her racing heart. "It's just the lighting, just the angle." But she didn't put the LABUBU back on the nightstand. She shoved it in her suitcase, zipped it closed, and didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The flight home the next day was uneventful, though Mia kept thinking she heard scratching sounds from her carry-on luggage. When she finally arrived at her apartment in Los Angeles, exhausted and jet-lagged, she almost threw the vintage LABUBU in the trash. Almost. Instead, she placed it on the shelf with the others, telling herself she was overreacting, that it was just a toy, that her imagination had been working overtime due to travel stress. That night, the nightmares returned, worse than before. But it wasn't just dreams anymore. Mia would wake up to find things move in her room. Her other LABUBU figures rearranged, facing her bed instead of facing outward. Her phone would show photos she didn't remember taking, close-ups of the vintage LABUBU from various angles, some taken at times when Mia had been asleep. On the third night, Mia set up her phone to record her room while she slept, determined to catch whatever was happening, whether it was herself sleepwalking or something else entirely. The footage made her blood run cold. At 3:17 a.m., the vintage LABUBU began to move. Not the jerky stop-motion movement of a toy being manipulated, but fluid, purposeful movement. It climbed down from the shelf using the wall decorations like a ladder, dropped to the floor, and approached Mia's bed. The other LABUBU figures remained motionless, but their eyes seemed to track the vintage one's movements. The vintage LABUBU climbed onto Mia's bed and sat on her chest, exactly where she'd felt pressure in her nightmares. It stayed there for 7 minutes, occasionally tilting its head, studying her face. Then it returned to the shelf, climbing back up exactly the way it had come down. Mia watched the video 3 times, her hands shaking, before she finally accepted what she was seeing. The toy was moving on its own. Somehow, impossibly, it was alive. She remembered the vendor's warning. If things go wrong, you burn it. Mia grabbed the vintage LABUBU from the shelf, wrapping it in a towel so she wouldn't have to touch it directly. It felt heavier than it should, and she swore she could feel it moving under the fabric. Struggling to escape, she ran down to the apartment building's parking garage, found a maintenance area where they kept a burn barrel for wood and cardboard, and started a fire. Her hands trembled as she unwrapped the toy, preparing to throw it in the flames. The LABUBU's face had changed again. Its expression was no longer mischievous or even sinister. It was furious. The mouth was open in a silent scream, the teeth now looking more like fangs, the eyes burning with what looked like genuine rage. "I'm sorry," Mia whispered, though she wasn't sure why she was apologizing. "But you have to go." She threw the toy into the fire. The LABUBU didn't burn like plastic should. Instead, it began to writhe and twist, its limbs bending in impossible directions. And it screamed, a high-pitched, inhuman sound that echoed the parking garage, making Mia cover her ears. Black smoke poured from the fire, forming shapes in the air. Faces, maybe, or creatures Mia couldn't tell. The smell was overwhelming. Nothing like burning plastic, but something organic and rotten, like burning flesh. Other residents of the building began appearing, drawn by the sound and smell. Someone called the fire department. Mia stood frozen, watching as the flames consumed the toy, unable to look away even as the smoke made her eyes water. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the LABUBU crumbled to ash. The moment it did, the screaming stopped. The smoke dissipated. The fire returned to normal, crackling quietly in the barrel. "What the hell were you burning?" asked Mr. Rodriguez from 4B, waving away smoke. "Smelled like death." "Just some trash," Mia managed to say. "I'm sorry. I didn't think it would smell so bad." The fire department arrived, shut down the fire, and gave Mia a warning about improper disposal of materials. She accepted it numbly, just grateful the ordeal was over. Except it wasn't. That night, Mia returned to her apartment to find all 17 of her remaining LABUBU figures arranged in a circle on her bedroom floor. In the center of the circle was a pile of ash, the same ash from the burned toy, somehow transported from the parking garage to her locked apartment. And written in the ash, in characters that matched the symbols from the vintage LABUBU's back, was a message. Mia used her phone to translate it. "You freed me. Now I free the others." Over the next week, Mia's apartment became a nightmare. The remaining LABUBU toys would move on their own, appearing in unexpected places, in her shower, in her refrigerator, tucked into her pillowcase. She would wake up surrounded by them, their plastic faces all turned toward her, their expressions somehow different from what she remembered. She tried to get rid of them, threw them in the dumpster, donated them to thrift stores, even tried to burn them like she'd burned the first one. But they always came back. Sometimes within hours, sometimes overnight, but they always returned, appearing on her shelves as if they'd never left. Mia researched the symbols from the vintage LABUBU and discovered they were protective seals from Thai folk magic, meant to trap malevolent spirits. By burning the toy, she hadn't destroyed the spirit. She'd released it, and now it was using her collection as vessels, spreading itself across multiple toys, making itself impossible to eliminate. In desperation, Mia contacted a Thai spiritual advisor through a forum dedicated to Southeast Asian folklore. The woman listened to her story via video call, her expression grave. "The spirit is attached to you now," the advisor said. "It chose you because you invited it in, gave it a home. The only way to break the connection is to destroy all the vessels at once, in a ritual that reseals the spirit." "How do I do that?" The advisor explained a complex ritual involving salt, specific herbs, and prayers in Thai that Mia would need to memorize phonetically. It had to be done at exactly 3:17 a.m., the time the first LABUBU had climbed onto her chest, and all 17 toys needed to be present. On the night of the full moon, Mia prepared. She gathered all 17 LABUBU figures, placed them in a circle of salt in her bathtub, and waited for 3:17 a.m. She'd spent days memorizing the prayers, practicing pronunciation, making sure she had everything exactly right. At 3:15 a.m., the toys began to move, all of them simultaneously, turned to face her with synchronized movements that made Mia's skin crawl. At 3:16 a.m., they began to speak, not in voices she could hear, but she felt their words in her head, promising terrible things, threatening her, begging her to stop. At 3:17 a.m., Mia lit the sage and began the prayers. The toys screamed, all of them, that same inhuman shriek the vintage one had made when burning. They thrashed in the salt circle, tried to escape, their plastic bodies beginning to crack and melt despite no fire touching them. Mia continued the prayers, her voice shaking but determined. The bathroom filled with black smoke, with shadows that reached for her, with cold that made her breath visible. And then, suddenly it was over. The toys crumbled to ash. The smoke dissipated. The temperature returned to normal. The only sound was Mia's ragged breathing and the drip of her bathroom faucet. The spirit was gone. Finally, completely gone. Mia never collected LABUBU toys again. In fact, she avoided toy stores entirely, especially one selling anything from Thailand. She deleted her Instagram collection account, threw away all the photos, tried to forget the entire experience. But sometimes, late at night when she's trying to fall asleep, Mia hears that sound, the scraping of tiny plastic feet on wood, the rustle of something small moving in the darkness. She tells herself it's just her imagination, just trauma manifesting as phantom sounds. But she keeps salt by her bed now, just in case. And she never, ever buys toys from street vendors anymore.